You're listening to a new episode of Girl Down Podcast with your host, me, Aon. So sit back, relax, and listen as I unpack the uncertainty of my 30s, one episode at a time. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Girl Down Podcast with me, Aon. And today I have a very special episode because I have a very special guest with me. I'm going to have her introduce herself. So come on in, Alicia. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Griffin. I am a real estate agent, and I've been in the business for over 8 years now, and I'm looking forward to answering all the questions you have for me, Brianna, and educating, your audience on real estate.
Definitely. So just a little background for the audience. So I'm at that point where I'm finished with all the schooling that I'm going to do. I have no desire to sit in anybody's classroom. And something that I've been thinking about the last year, especially as I think about where I want to be permanently meaning the next 10 years, I've thought a lot about buying a home. My mom owns her own home. So I have people in my family close to me that own their own property. And that's something that I wanted to do as well. And I also have people in my friend group who either own houses or in the process of buying houses. And one of my good friends from law school, shout out to Diamond, she just bought her house. And I met you through Diamond because you're Diamond's partner, and y'all just bought a house together. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful house in the DMV area. And just that proximity of somebody who was my peer doing it, and also her connection to you and you having this expertise, it kind of piqued my interest, like, okay, I can really do this. And then when I came to visit you all, and y'all basically broke down the process of, well, if you know this information, and like you can live, one, it's a better financial investment, and two, it's something that you could do. And you and I had a conversation, and you were just able to make me feel comfortable, because I can't lie when it comes to real estate. Even though I have a parent that owns a house, that's still a lot that I didn't know. So I was like, I have to get you on the show because you made me feel so comfortable after that conversation. So let's start here. What got you interested in real estate?
Well, I got interested in real estate when I was in college. So I actually know my partner through college. We both attended Howard University.
Okay.
And what got me interested in real estate, a mentor of mine, kind of said, you should attend some real estate classes. You just have a very salesperson personality. And, I think you do well, selling homes. So I went to one of the lectures and I was like, oh, this is absolutely something I could do. And the first thing that really struck me was the opportunity to help others. It was huge for me to help others, other millennial young people, educating them and guiding them through the process of purchasing a home, because to me, that was one key to, ownership and having assets and gaining assets in this capitalistic society. So it was kind of a combination of passion to helping my peers and, also being able to be my own boss, right? And I'm a firm believer that being a homeowner is one avenue, in being your own boss. So that's how I kind of came into real estate. I've been doing it since I was 22 years old. And I haven't looked back since. So I'm very well versed in the real estate world, and especially helping first-time buyers. So one of your statements was, for you personally, kind of jumping that hurdle, I have to say that when someone comes to me and they're expressing interest in buying a home, I immediately get excited because I'm just like, okay, just having that interest is really the biggest obstacle that you're going to have to overcome, right? I think for a lot of people, the idea of being a homeowner is daunting.
Yes,
right? And
very.
so letting people know that, hey, I know this is scary, but you start to put things into place, you too, will see the benefits of being a homeowner over being a renter. Because essentially when you're a renter, you're just paying someone else's mortgage, right?
Right.
So when you start to have a different perspective about being a homeowner, even though it is scary and it is daunting and it is a huge responsibility, but it's a manageable one, especially if you're taking an educated approach to buying a home.
Right.
So yeah, when I met with you, I was like, oh, this is exactly up my alley. What can I do to help Brianna get to that next phase of, going through the home buying process? Now, you're interested in buying in New York. I am a licensed agent in the DMV area, as you stated. And I did help my partner. She graciously allowed me to be her real estate agent. She didn't have to choose me, but just like you, I educated her on that process and made her feel comfortable with what's going on, educating her every step of the way on what to expect and how to be, a responsible buyer, especially in today's competitive market. So I would say the very first thing that people should do who are interested in being a homeowner is going to be meet with a real estate professional. You've brought me on in front of your audience. I'm more than happy to help not only you, but everyone that's listening in on your podcast on getting there. So that's the very first thing you want to do is meet with a real estate professional, a realtor, a real estate agent, make sure they're licensed and make sure they're sitting down with you to have a buyer consultation so that you can know what to expect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the very first thing. So,
well, you got right into my first question for me. So in the consultation and we're not talking about luxury properties, but just for anybody that wants to buy a house, that should be a free experience. Nobody should be
absolutely be free. A consultation done with a legitimate agent, it's going to be free because that's going to be the opportunity for me to ascertain where you at in your home buying journey and for you to get to know me or whatever agent that you've selected to get to know them, to make sure that you guys will make a great team, with purchasing a home. Everybody's journey is going to be different. Some people, I've had buyers where they were ready to buy in a couple of weeks, and I've had buyers where it took, several years before they were able to pull the trigger, right? So to speak. Right. And that's okay. But that biggest obstacle is, hey, I want to buy a home. Well, you meet with a real estate professional and they'll be able to guide you on where you're at in that journey, right?
Right.
So that's the very first step you want to do is to meet with a real estate professional. And just to kind of jump ahead, the very next thing you're going to do is speaking with a lender. Okay.
Okay. So what is a lender for people that don't know what that is?
Got you. So unless you're prepared to buy a home with cash, most of us in, again, this capitalistic society don't have cash in hand, unfortunately, to go out and purchase a home. So we're going to speak with a lender to get financing, to get that mortgage loan, that purchasing power determined by a financing expert who's going to be, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Those are the things that typically come to mind when people are thinking of purchasing a home. I always encourage people to do their research on local lenders, especially for my first-time buyers, meeting with a lender who works with those first-time buyer programs. Okay. The goal when you're sitting down with a lender is they're going to look at your credit score. They're going to look at, your work history, and they're going to look at your debt. They're going to look at your debt to income ratio to determine how much home you can afford. Okay. Sometimes you don't want to end with one lender or one agent telling you, well, you're not ready. Okay. Sometimes it takes multiple agents and speaking with multiple lenders to find that person who's going to be able to accommodate what you're trying to do. Okay.
Right.
Not every lender works with the first time home buyer programs. Not every agent works with those programs. Right. So that's something to consider as well. In the DMV, I happen to be an agent that works with those first time buyer programs. And I have the lenders in the DMV area to help my clients purchase a home, depending on their where they're at financially. So again, a lender is just going to sit down with you and look at your credit score, look at your debt to income ratio. If you're not quite there, a good lender is going to tell you the steps to get there, right? And they're going to say, we can't do it now, but in 3 months, once you've paid down this credit card debt, we're going to take another look at you. The ultimate goal that you want from the lender is to get what's called a pre-approval letter.
Okay.
So, and I know I'm saying a lot of information. Feel free to stop me.
No. That's great. So when we met, you were talking about a pre-approval letter, and then you referred me to a agent in New York, and they were talking about a pre-approval letter, and you were just saying that you want to make sure you have the access to that before you even really get the idea of, okay, I'm going to take this next step, because you want to know that you have that letter, because that's kind of like a big step of the process.
That's what I would say is one of the most important aspects of buying a home, because what a pre-approval letter does is it shows the seller that you are capable of purchasing their home. So again, unless you have 300,000, New York City, that market is wild. So 700,000 for a first-time home cash, you need a lender. And that lender is going to give you that financing, right? So that you can purchase that home. And how they show that is through a pre-approval letter.
Yeah, and I think most people, well, I don't want to assume what are in people's bank accounts, but unless young folks are influencers or celebrities, I think most of us, including myself, will be in the boat where we will need a lender. And I liked how you also said that do your research and kind of look for like loans from banks that are local, not as small. You might get banks who are willing to work with you. Also, me being a lawyer and me being aware of what's going on, some banks have histories of not loaning to Black people throughout the years, and so I'm very aware, and I like to have options when it comes to that. Because I like to pay back my debts. I like to pay back my debts, and I want a bank that's going to work with me. Go ahead.
Sorry. What you just stated historically, has been an issue, and that's something that as a realtor, I advocate for the public, right? So what happened, that was called redlining, where banks were discriminating against African Americans and not handing out loans depending on where they lived, right, in an area. So that is something that historically has happened. I think in the latest news, I can't recall which bank, so I'm not going to say a bank.
I know what bank, but we're just not going to say it.
Right, but there are banks who are still discriminating. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. And so that's why you want to make sure that you are essentially meeting with more than one real estate agent, meeting with more than one bank, so that you're learning what financial packages are available to you, despite the discrimination that we're facing as Black Americans or, people of color in this country, right? So one thing, again, you want to meet with more than one lender. And if you're not vibing with your real estate agent, keep meeting with other agents until you find someone that is going to essentially represent your best interests, right? And that's what a real estate agent, that's what my job is. So yeah, absolutely. Redlining has happened historically, and I would argue recently, I saw something in the news again where a bank was being discriminatory. So there's a lot of obstacles that people, especially people of color, can face, but it's all about, doing your research, not taking that first no, but finding the people that are going to represent you, finding the lenders that are going to work with you and work with where you're at until you get to a place where they're like, okay, we got the pre-approval letter for you. Let's go house hunting.
I was going to get to this towards the latter part of the conversation, but the conversation that you just brought up about redlining and how that really hurt communities of color, especially Black people, because owning a house is an easy way for one to generate wealth. Can you speak a little bit about, to people who are not informed, how can you generate wealth from owning a house?
Absolutely. So I'll give one example of one client that I worked with earlier on in my career. This client, I went and showed, again, early on in my career, showed, I think, over 70 houses too, which is ridiculous. At that point, you know the market better than a lot of other agents here, you know. So what I expressed to him was, you know, a couple years later, he reached out like, okay, I think I'm ready to buy. And I was like, hey, you know, we went and saw this many houses. It's 2 years later, those houses that you were looking at are now worth $100,000 more than when you started the process. So essentially, he missed out on $100,000 worth of equity. Does that make sense? So you get your pre-approval letter, a bank is willing to work with you, you know, or your great-great-grandma left you an inheritance, you're ready to buy a house. The greatest thing to me is leveraging that real estate, whether you're leveraging it to provide shelter, you're leveraging it to rent out to other people, you know, or you're using it to, you know, hold for a couple of years, live in it, and then you turn around and put it back on the market and you sell it and you make 30,000 to 150 in a couple of years. Does that make sense? So if you are just a renter, you don't have that power in real estate. You're paying someone else's mortgage, right? Which could be, their mortgage could be $1,500 and you're paying, you know, $2,800 in monthly rent.
Right.
So essentially, owning real estate gives you that power that your landlord has, right? So you go from being someone who's just throwing their income away every month to now being in a position where you can either leverage that property again for your own personal use, for, you know, renting it out to someone else and gaining a monthly profit, even if it's a couple $100s, or, you know, living in it for a few years and then turning around and selling it. Again, I've had clients who it took them so long and they were dragging their feet that they missed out on thousands of dollars of equity by not pulling that trigger when they finally got their pre-approval letter.
So let's take it a step further, because this was my hesitation with buying a house. I was under the misconception that if I was still paying on my mortgage, that in the event that my property value went up, that I couldn't sell my mortgage because I still had it left to pay off. And you explained to me that even if you still have a outstanding mortgage amount, you can still sell your property. So can you explain a little bit about that process?
Absolutely. So with a mortgage loan, it's entirely different from a student loan, right? Unless Biden comes in for us and it eradicates all of our student loan debt.
He better.
Right. We have to pay, which Biden, yes, please eradicate student loan debt. It'll boost the economy so much, including helping people buy a home. But so that's the difference. With a student loan, it's tied to you, you know, forevermore. With a home loan, once you sell that house, your first lien against that property is going to be your mortgage loan, right? So when you go and sell your house, you're first paying off the mortgage, right? Then you're paying off the cost of doing business, and that's going to include the real estate agent and the title company who helped you sell your home. Okay, and then the rest is just going to be your profit, what you're netting from the deal. So let's say you buy a house for $150,000 and a couple of years later you sell it for 175. Well, you pay off the bank and it's now less than 150. Now let's say your mortgage is only 120. So you pay off the 120 loan that you have left with that bank, and then the rest of that profit is essentially yours. So you have around $60,000 that you've made. So what you're doing is, even though you have a 15-year or a 30-year mortgage, you're only tied to that for as long as you own the home. Once you sell that home, you're paying off that same mortgage. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And that was something that I wasn't aware of. I thought,
right.
And also, I think that's a generational thing, especially with Black people. It's like, because our parents and our grandparents bought their homes, and the idea is that we stayed in those houses until we died,
right,
until we were able to pass them on. And our generation, that we like to move, and I didn't know that there was a process to make that easier. I thought I would have to be tied to a house or tied to an area for so long. So when I found out that wasn't necessarily the case, it made me more interested in, I need to look a little bit more into this. I want to go to this part of the conversation, which you just brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Student loans right now, they've been on pause since the start of the pandemic, but the latest update is that the loan repayment is paused until the end of August. Mm-hmm. What is the benefit of student loans being on pause for folks who have student loan debt who are looking to buy property?
So I did work with some clients who bought during the pandemic and had student loan debt that was on pause. I think the biggest thing from that experience that I learned was, providing documentation to the bank to show what payment arrangements they had with their student loan. So for instance, people in default, they're still going to have to get out of default, right? They're still going to have to correct their student loan setup before they'll likely get a pre-approval from a bank. But if you can show the bank, hey, yeah, it's, on hold right now, but this is when things go back into, the normal student loan payment, when that's reactivated, this is how much I'm paying. That's what the banks want to see, because again, they're determining your purchasing power based off of your debt to income ratio, right? And your student loans falls into that debt. I believe the number that the banks look at, it's a certain percentage that lenders will look at. And it's like 30% of your debt, versus your income. So your entire debt can't be more than 30% of what you're making. Does that make sense?
Right.
Don't quote me on that. That's where the financing experts come in. Okay. I'm not the financing expert. I am the person that helps you find the house and then negotiate the best deal on the house. All right. But my lenders, those are my financing experts. And maybe we can have another, episode where we bring on a lender. Okay. To answer those questions. Absolutely. But so that's what they're going to look for. The banks are going to say, show me documentation of what you normally pay. And then they'll utilize that information to determine your purchasing power, which then they'll send you and your agent the pre-approval letter based off of those numbers.
Okay.
So it's gonna be case by case. Everybody's gonna have a different story. There's going to be people that are in default. It's not the end of it's not the end all be all. Go call up those student loan people and work out a deal. I believe at one point in my life, I was paying my student loans $5 back a month because, I just wasn't in a position from, where I was working to make those full payments. So the great thing about the pandemic, and this is horrible to say, but a lot of people are in crazy situations. So you just want to communicate with the loan people, hey, this is all I can afford. This is all you guys are going to get from me. Okay. And then they'll fix that in that system. You print out that documentation. This is what I'm paying, as when you're applying for a home loan, you show them that information, then the banks, especially a local lender that specializes in home loans, they're going to be more willing to work with you on getting you that pre-approval letter.
That is great information. And the most important thing is it depends on the particular person. So everybody don't listen to the show and think just because, my student loans are on pause, it might change things, but it's not for certain. So, and I have to ask for myself because I'm one of those people that I hope the student loans will always be paused so I can be a little bit more financially free.
Listen, I'm one of those people that want the student loans to be completely eradicated.
Yes, and not $10,000. $10,000 will do absolutely nothing for me. Right. Y'all might as well just give me a $10,000 check for all of that so I can spend it on
right. I mean, it just makes so much sense. And a lot of economists have argued that I follow that, eradicating debt would boost the economy substantially, because millennials were such a large generation, a large population, and highly educated, group of people. So it only makes sense that they would eradicate that, and then we can put our money back into the housing market, back into, consuming goods and services. So yep,
I would love to spend more money if I don't have student debt, but we'll see.
There you go.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
So I want to give back. What terms should somebody that is quote unquote illiterate to the home buying process? But you know what? Before I get here, before I lose it, what is the first time home buyer program for the folks who don't know what that is?
First time buyer programs are basically state-backed opportunities within a jurisdiction. So in the state of Maryland, in DC, there's the Open Doors program, there's HPAP, there's the Maryland Mortgage program. So all of those are different programs based off of the jurisdiction that you're living in, where they provide financial aid to a first-time buyer. Okay, how do you qualify as a first-time buyer? You've never purchased a home in that jurisdiction before. Legit, that's it. So you're looking in New York. Of course, I'm not licensed there, so I can do my best to find agents that work with those programs. I'm also going to send you some other agents as well.
Okay.
Who may have more knowledge on those first-time programs. So you want to do your research. Hop on Google, first-time buyer programs and grants in the state of New York City. Okay. You'll get information. You can call the real estate commission in your local jurisdiction and ask these questions as well. Or again, find a realtor and ask that do you work with first-time buyer programs? Have that be a part of, your things that you're looking for in an agent and in a lender. But again, those programs are going to be specific to a jurisdiction, right? And just like a scholarship, when you're applying for college, there are going to be different programs and grants available depending on where you're at, where you're located more so. Okay. So there are some programs that are free. There are some grants that you don't have to pay back that I work with in Maryland and in DC. And then there are other programs where it's basically another loan that you won't have to pay back until down the line after you've purchased the home. And again, that's going to be something that the lenders, my financing experts, are going to have more information about. But me as an agent, I'm aware of. And so, right, so we can use those grants to help you purchase a home, right? So a lot of with my first time buyers in this area, I'm like, listen, you might not have, a lot of money saved up, but as long as you have consistent income and you get a pre-approval letter from a legitimate lender, we can utilize these programs to help you pay for the closing costs, right? And things like that, and down payment. So, yep.
Yes, that was also something that I heard about. I remember folks back when I was living in Baltimore talking about classes that you could go to where you could qualify for the program. But I think the programs that I heard about, the grants were to cover the initial down payment, to reduce the down payment, to make it easier for people to pay it so they could get into their homes. But for this audience that is primarily folks of color, are there grants around, or are there grants for Black people, for Black?
Specifically because with real estate and because of the discrimination that happened in the past, there's what's called fair housing laws. So basically, fair housing laws say that you cannot discriminate based on someone's race. So because of that, I feel like there aren't a lot of, grants or loans specific to one's ethnicity or race, right? So that's kind of like the issue with that. That's not to say that there aren't loans or grants available to people of color, There very well could be, but I think you're getting into kind of a messy situation because of the fair housing laws that are in place. Just to answer that question. What I'm always taught in real estate is the only color that matters is the color green, right? So there are first time programs that are available, but they're going to be made available to pretty much anyone, despite what their, racial background is.
I had to ask until we get reparations. I have to ask. I also feel like there should be a grant for LGBTQ folks as well. So I need as many pieces of the pie as I can get. But those fair housing laws. So what are some just basic terms, in addition to the terms that we've already covered, that folks should know if they want to buy a house, that they should just be aware of, like what this thing means?
Absolutely. So just to kind of go, let me jump back a little bit here. And are you ready to buy? Okay. The things that a lender is going to look at to determine, are you ready to purchase a home? Do you have steady income? Okay. Low to medium debt, right? We've talked about that. Cash for down payment, closing costs. Again, we can look at grants and programs to help with that. 2 months of pay stubs and bank statements. That's what the bank is going to be looking at. If you're your own business, they're going to be looking up to past 2 years that you've been working with that company or you've had that business running. Okay, so outside of that, terms that I would look for, closing costs. Let's see, let me just pull up my slide here. Under contract, that's a term that a lot of my clients don't know about. And that just means that a property, has a contract on that home. So let's say you're looking on Zillow and you're sending me, hey, Alicia, I want to go see this house. Well, you're not looking on the MLS. That's another good term. The MLS, that's the multiple listing service. That's basically the marketplace of homes that are available to be purchased, right? So if you're looking on Zillow and you send me a house and you want to see it, and I see that it's pending or under contract, well, we can't go and see it because somebody else is already in the process of purchasing it, okay?
Yeah, you told me to get off Zillow immediately. Stop looking on Zillow.
Right. The number one thing you want is you want a real estate agent who's going to put you on the MLS so that you can see what is actually active and ready to be purchased. Okay. Zillow is a great platform to just kind of get your feet wet. If you are going to use apps to look at the real estate market, I recommend using realtor.com. That being because I'm a realtor and we pay for things to be protected and to protect the public, realtor.com is directly tied to the MLS. So that means it's updated. As soon as a home goes off the market or goes under contract or it's sold, that's going to be updated in the realtor.com app. So you're not seeing anything that's not really available. You're not getting your hopes all high for a house that you can't even purchase, right? But yeah, Zillow, truly, it's a good starting point. But once you meet your agent, what you want to do is get on the MLS. Another term, property appraisal. That's a good one. That's where an appraiser is going to come out, look at the home when you're under contract and determine its market value. Okay. They're pretty much looking at other homes like yours that have sold recently. So that's what an appraisal is. So when a third party comes out while you're under contract on a home to make sure that what the bank is lending you is going to be safeguarded, pretty much. So it's the bank who sends out the appraiser. Okay. Let's see, processing fee, underwriting fee, lender fees. Those are all going to be fees that are going to be a part of your closing costs. The title company, those are, what it costs to do business, what it costs to buy a home. Okay. So pretty much those are going to be my key terms to leave you with. I have a lot more, and of course, I'd love to do a buyer consultation with anyone who is buying in the DMV area. I'm here to schedule and break it down even further with you. And again, that's what you want to look for in a real estate agent, is someone who's going to educate you on the process and what to expect and what everything that you're signing and getting into, involves. Okay.
But so you're in the DMV area. What are some of the best things about owning property in the DMV?
Absolutely. So
I like how you just
agree with
lit
that.
up when you said, I like how you lit up when I asked that. Yeah.
Right. I love that question. I'm from the Midwest, and one of the things that attracted me to DC was, to me, it was like the seat of power in the world. And just the fact that everything is ran by capitalism. And I had this very early realization that it's how well you play the game, you know? And that's how I view DC. It's, to me, an anomaly. It sits outside of every other market in this country because it's pretty consistent with how the market is going to work. Like, there's always going to be value with owning homes in this area. And that's why I'm licensed here. So another thing you want to be familiar with is going to be the home inspection. So when you're under contract as a first-time buyer, you always want to get a home inspection done on the house. That's going to be the person that comes in, goes through the entire house with you, and will let you know anything that is wrong with the property. Okay. So home inspection. Latent defects, that's another term. Latent defect is something that you go in with a home inspector and you don't see it. It's not observable. So you could buy a home, and even though you've had a home inspector who's pointed out everything that they could find wrong with the property, you could have a plumbing issue that turns up months down or years down the road. Well, that was a latent defect. It's not that anyone's at fault. It's just that the plumbing has now messed up and you weren't able to see it when you purchased the home. And that's part of the responsibility of being a homeowner. Another thing I encourage my first-time buyers, have an account, a savings that goes just towards your home expenses. Okay, you can have home insurance on the property. The lender will make sure of that. You'll also have home warranty. You'll want to get that on your home, but you always want to have just a separate account. I say of at least 5,000. So if something goes wrong, you have something, a security blanket to kind of work from. Mm-hmm. But the great thing of having home insurance and home warranty is a lot of times something breaks down. A lot of people don't even realize they can call up the home insurance or the home warranty specialist and have it fixed. They're paying out of pocket for something that could have been fixed with what they paid for at the closing table.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Latent defects. I remember that term from law school and towards when we were talking about product liability law. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. So what would you say are like some of the most common misperceptions that folks have about home ownership that prevent them from buying homes?
Oh, I think it being one of the largest assets that most people will have in their lifetimes. When you buy a home, it really does become, for most of us, the largest asset that we have. And I think a lot of the fear comes with, they want to make sure that they're buying a home that's going to increase in equity rather than, it's going to appreciate, right? That's usually what homes do, is they appreciate. Whereas you buy a car and it does nothing but depreciate in value.
Mm-hmm.
You buy a car, you're not going to sell that car for more than what you bought it for. You buy a house, it appreciates if the market is going well, and you can sell it and make a huge profit. But I think it's just that initial hurdle of taking on that responsibility for, if something breaks down, it's not your landlord who's going to fix it. Because guess what? Now you are the landlord, right? You are the manager. You are the responsible party for your home. My thing is, just like a car breaks down and has maintenance issues, your home is also going to need to be updated and, maintained. So I think just putting in security blankets to help one feel secure with home ownership is the biggest obstacle. Again, having that little savings, having the home insurance in place and the home warranty. So if something does break down, well, you don't have to come directly out of pocket. You can call the home warranty specialist up and they'll come in and fix the problem. Right. So and again, educate, just like you were daunted by the fact of getting a mortgage and you're tied to that mortgage for 30 years. Yeah, you are, but you can pay it off early, right? You can get a renter in there to help you pay the mortgage. You can buy a home, get a renter in there who's paying the mortgage plus some while you go and travel the world or buy some, investment properties all over the place. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So You get a mortgage, it doesn't mean that you're just tied to that home again. You sell that home, you're paying off that mortgage. And hopefully also getting a nice check as well, right?
Right.
But I think, again, that's kind of the scary factor with people is, oh, I'm going to be really responsible for a whole house. Yes, you are. You're going to be responsible for a house. If something breaks down, you're going to be responsible for getting it fixed. You see a lot of people out here. I'm sure you've been to homes where people own the home and, there's a huge stain in the ceiling and the toilet isn't working. But guess what? They still have an asset at some degree that they can leverage, even in the, state that it is. So just because you own a home, not everyone's fixing everything that breaks down. But when they go to sell it, they can still make $100 in the DMV area, $100,000. I've had homes. Let's see, one client of mine, she was an elderly lady, and she purchased a home, I want to say in the 60s or 70s. And when I went into this home, everything in the home was pretty much just breaking down. Right? We sold that home 5-6 years ago for $785,000. She purchased the home for $60,000. How much money did she make? $785K versus the $60K, that mortgage that she got on it. She made well over $500,000.
Right.
For a dilapidated house that she had lived in for 30 years. She was dealing with a divorce. Bless her heart. Her husband had divorced her. I got her in a brand new condo in DC, right? Brand new, where she had paid off most of the house and got a similar mortgage to what she had been paying for $100K just to, pay that difference. So she's still paying the $500, $600 that she was used to paying on her mortgage, but in a brand new house, right? So people say, well, don't sell grandma's house. No, that's not what you want to do. You want to buy property, live in it, rent it, and then sell it, and then go buy new property or more property. You don't want to just keep the same home that's been in a dilapidated condition. You want to keep it improved if you can afford to, and, sell it so you can make a huge profit and put that into even more homes and investments. That's how you build wealth, right? And that's, I think, where we miss the mark. That makes sense? Just not having that real estate knowledge. That's not something, they don't teach real estate in high school courses or anything like that.
No.
But that's where especially minority communities are missing that mark. They're holding on to grandma's house. And then when grandma's gone, they're fighting over the little measly bit of money when, call me. I'll tell you how you can turn grandma's house into not just a $30,000 split amongst all the grandkids, but, a potentially $100,000 split for all of the grandkids. So
right. Sell it and split the money and shut up
and go buy your own and go buy another house. Everybody go and buy a house from what grandma did, so you can keep grandma's house, but how are you going to make grandma's house make money? That's the question.
Right. Yeah, I keep having this conversation with my mom. I'm like, because another thing that I learned from the conversation with you and Diamond, something you can, if you're not the type of person that's going to go online to check your property value, if you're seeing a lot of influx of new neighbors come into the neighborhood, that's kind of like a inconspicuous sign that your property value may be going up if you have all of these new people going in there. And where my mom lives, there's constantly new people. And I'm like, you don't want to sell that property and just see? She's like, no, I just want to hold on to it. And I'm like, you don't have to. You don't have to. But they're from a different generation. But I am glad that my mom got to own her home, because I did get to see how it is on the responsibility of the homeowner to do. And my mom bought that house in '96. It's all on you to do the upkeep, the maintenance, the remodeling. She's done her kitchen all over again, and you really get to do what you want to do. But that's a good thing, and I won't say it's a bad thing, but it can be a happy thing, because a lot of money and time and patience goes into that. And you just kind of have to be aware before you take that leap. So I want to go to and I think we've kind of talked about this throughout our conversation together, but I kind of want you to just bring it home, just the benefits of young Black folks owning homes, especially in these metropolitan areas, just hammering home just the benefits of why folks should at least consider home ownership versus renting property.
Absolutely. So it goes back to, financial like power that owning a home can yield you. Again, whether it's having the right to rent out the home. So you buy a home and you have a $1,700 mortgage on that home in the DMV, and you decide to leave the DMV. Well, you've lived there for a couple of years. You can either put it on the market, possibly make anywhere from 30 to 100K. Okay, so what's the benefit of deciding to move and having thousands of dollars to take with you on that move versus nothing? I guess maybe a security deposit that you'll get back from having been a renter, right?
Right.
So there's the biggest difference is, as a renter, you decide to move, you're leaving that home that you've been paying for the past 2-3+ years, where you're not going to get any benefit from leaving that home, right? The landlord is. You might get the security deposit back if you haven't caused any damage to the property while you've been there. Whereas if you're going to be in an area for 2+ years, why not buy? Okay. And then you are setting yourself up to, when you want to leave that area, you can then put it on the market and again, get a check for thousands of dollars, up to 100, who knows, however the market is, where the market is going. And right now it's a seller's market, right? So you're going with making money just from paying for the roof that's over your head, which you're going to do that irregardless, right?
Right.
Everyone needs a home. Everyone needs shelter. So you're either going to be a renter and you're going to be paying somebody else's mortgage, or you're going to be a homeowner so that when you do leave, you get a check. That's really the biggest difference that I can try to drive home with people. As a renter, you're essentially throwing away money every month. As a homeowner, you're investing in yourself, I would argue. And that's the biggest difference. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm trying to invest in myself. Before we go, and this is probably personal to me, I was told that for me to be in a better position when I go to ask for my loan, that I should be at my job for like at least 6 months to a year. And that if I was to get a loan now, since for my job I just started like in April, that wouldn't be long enough to put me in the best position. Should folks, because I'm thinking like, especially now with like the Great Resignation and people like leaving their jobs and hopping from jobs to job, in your experience, are lenders skeptical to give folks loans if they haven't been on their jobs for a long period of time, for people that might want to buy a house quickly?
Mm-hmm. So I think this would be a great question where we bring a lender on to answer those questions. Because I can say, what I can say as a realtor, but to give an answer from a lending perspective, it's going to base off of what I'm seeing. The lenders, the realtors, the sellers, everybody's going to change how they conduct their business based off of what the demand is, right? So if a lot of millennials are, and it's not just millennials, but every person out there, they're changing the way they work, then it's just going to so happen that the loan industry, the financing industry too, is going to have to change. So again, I think that's where it comes into, as a first-time buyer, doing your research and having more than one lender that you speak to. So you can best ascertain, well, who has the best financial package for me and who's educated me the most. If you have every lender saying, well, we need you to be at that job a couple more months, okay, be at the job a couple more months. If you don't like the job, and I've told clients this before who got pre-approved and they were telling me, Alicia, I'm done with this job. I'm like, listen, Stay at this job.
That was me a couple months ago. That was me. I can't.
Unless you have something else lined up, stay at this job, buy your house, okay? And maybe I shouldn't say this, but guess what? After you've bought that home and after you've gone through,
you've already got the loan.
You've gotten the loan. Now you just need to make sure I don't care what you do after that. As long as you're paying your loan every month, your mortgage every month,
right?
You're good to go. So keep the job, stay in the job until you get a replacement, as long as it takes for you to take that step to be a homeowner,
Right.
And not to put my partner's business out there, she can't stand her job. She's ready to move on, find some other opportunities. That she loves her job, but she's ready to expand herself. So it's just like, let's buy a house. We could buy a house instead of renting and paying someone else's, and pay less than, mind you, because right now it's almost more affordable for people to just go ahead and buy a home over paying these egregious rental rates that the homeowners are.
That's another reason why I'm trying to buy a house, because these rents, especially in the so I was going to move to New York, but since I'm going to establish my history in my new job, I decided I'm just going to go to Texas, because Texas is just, the rent is just way cheaper than it is in New York. I just financially, it's until I'm able to have my ducks in a row to get my mortgage. I need to be spending as less money as possible on rent as I can until I get there. And New York, love New York down, but that $2,000 a month for a studio, I can't.
Yeah, right.
I cannot.
So you got to do what's best for you. So, there are places in this country where there are rental rates that are super affordable. I'm from the Midwest. Every time I go home to Kansas City, I'm just like, this is how much y'all are paying in rent for, paying in mortgage for big, huge homes. I'm looking at investing in the Midwest as well. So yeah, definitely go where you're going to be able to advance yourself the quickest. Right? Just because you're living in Texas does not mean you can't buy home property in New York City. Okay. So you're already in the right mindset for sure. Look for where you can live for the most affordable amount. But the benefit, again, of being a homeowner versus a renter is you can leverage that home and rent it out to someone else. So they're paying your mortgage. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You own a home. Maybe you'll live in the basement while you have a renter who lives on the main level and the top level, and they're paying the entire mortgage, and you're not paying your mortgage at all. And you're making couple extra $100 on top of that. That's what real estate, that's what owning a home gives you. It gives you power, financial freedom, if you're leveraging it in the right ways.
And like I said, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Yep. That's all.
No, and like I said during my conversation, when it's all said and done, I would love to have to own a duplex, and I live in one side of the duplex and rent out the other side, or have like a 3-story apartment building with 6 units, and I live in one of the units. Yep. And just rent them out and just live off of my rents. Because you said, everybody's going to have to pay rent. Everybody needs shelter. So the fastest way that I can do that, the better for me.
Yep. And what you're speaking to as well, I'm sorry, because I know we're going into a long conversation here, but what you're speaking to is what's called a multi-family unit.
Yes.
Which you can do, right? But sometimes it means buying a first-time home, buying a single-family home for, $200K or $150 or $300,000, right? Wherever that means you can afford it. And, building. So you buy a home and then you sell a home, and you use that money to then invest in the multifamily unit, right? Because a lot of multifamily units in the DMV are going to start at 800,000. They're going to be 1.2 million because it's a large home, right? So the goal is to start somewhere. Again, you buy a home, it doesn't mean it's your forever home. It just means it's a starting place, being a real estate investor, because that's what you've become once you bought a home. You've invested your money into real estate, right? So start somewhere, start with where you can afford. Maybe you'll get to Texas and you'll see the real estate market out there, and it's really, you can afford to buy a nice big home out there. You sit on that for a couple of years, and then you can leverage the profits from your Texas home to buy your New York City multifamily unit. You see what I'm saying?
Definitely.
That's what real estate gives you. It gives you equity. It gives you power. It's an asset that hopefully appreciates. People have asked me, well, what happens if it depreciates, right? If the market bursts in a certain area? Okay, rent it out. Rent it out until the market, if you don't want to live there yourself, rent that house out until the market comes back up. What do we all learn in basic economics? Everything in economics is a cycle. The real estate market is not special from basic economics. Okay. It's all a cycle. And if you're in a market where you don't have a lot of power as a seller, well, hold on to the house, rent it out. And when it comes back up, that's when you sell it. Right. So hopefully that's, inspired your audience. And I've answered a lot of questions that you had for me. It's getting kind of dark. I can turn on the light over here, but
yes, it's getting dark on my end. But Alicia, thank you so much for just taking time out of your busy schedule to sit with me and giving the audience and me so much knowledge and just empowering everybody to take their power and to take charge of their financial future. I don't feel as afraid as I was about the home buying process, and I feel empowered to learn more and get closer to the point where I'm able to buy my home, hopefully very, 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 very soon. But how can folks get in contact with you?
Absolutely, Brianna. Thank you for having me on your show and giving me the opportunity to share the information and the knowledge that I have. I'm one of your biggest cheerleaders now. I'm going to be sending you more contacts, more agents to speak with as you weed through who's going to be the best team for you. And we're going to get you to home ownership. I can be reached. My Instagram, it's kind of a combination of my day-to-day life and real estate. So don't judge me there. But my Instagram is Alicia M. Griffin. Okay. Again, that's Alicia, Alicia M for money. We'll say that. Griffin. Okay, that's my handle on Instagram. I can also be reached if you send me a text to my number 202-277-9801. Any real estate questions anyone may have, I'm happy to schedule a consultation. So we pretty much had like a mini consultation. I'll have a more in-depth conversation for anyone who's purchasing a home in the DMV. If you're not purchasing a home in the DMV, then I will set you up with an agent anywhere else in the world, okay, to help somebody buy a home wherever they're living or wherever they're interested in purchasing. All right.
Alicia, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And to the audience, thank you for listening to another episode of Girl Down Podcast with me, Ayon, and I will see y'all on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Girl Down Podcast with me, Ayon. If you like the show, please be sure to go on over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast. Also, make sure that you're engaging with me on social media. Also, if you have any inquiries or you want to send me any questions, be sure to email me at girldownpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, bye y'all.